Hello again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Fake has become so normal these days that people get offended when you tell them the truth. Let's talk now about honesty. And honesty is the quality of being truthful, fair, and trustworthy, while false is the state of being untrue or false. That's it. What we, actually some of us, discover throughout our lives that honesty involves telling the truth and acting with integrity, as well as fostering trust in relationships. Whereas falsehood is a lie or an untrue statement that erodes trust and can damage one's reputation. I'd love to ask that question again. What is honesty? I will describe it as truthfulness and integrity. Honesty means speaking and acting truthfully and respecting moral principles, and being upright in one's dealings with others. Talking about trustworthiness, I believe that honest individuals are seen as reliable and dependable, which forms the basis of strong personal and professional relationships. Honesty is considered a fundamental moral virtue that underpins ethical behavior and sound decision-making. What can we further say about falsehood? Untruthfulness and falsehood refers to a lie or a statement that is not true. Here is a story which you may prefer not to believe, but I intend to speak about it nevertheless. Imagine a family wherein there are a number of young children and mother is suffering from a psychological sensitivity, but extremely influenced by an unusual cult, whose intention is to get the entire family serve their cause. They have already discovered that the mother has a dilemma, but wants only the best for her children, understandably, and the cult members are extremely keen to make her believe in them only, and convincing her that she would be better off taking her children away from their supposedly devil-worshipping father, which is never the case, as he is a scientist. Eventually, she manages to convince the children to follow her, believing that they are most certainly subjected to Mother Knows Best syndrome. One day she abducts them with the help of the cult she adheres to, and their members keep on training the young minds of the children to hate the evil in the world. But they are also inflicted with the evil they assume to observe in their father, for the father does not accept the beliefs of the cult. And so, they grow up believing in the lies inflicting them as being true. Their father is now alone and lonesome, but survives, and his children, who are now young adults never care, never ask about their father, only ignoring him as if he never existed. The cult, thus using their mother, punishes their father forever for not believing in their lies. Now, how can one help a family of this nature? Here we discover once again one of the sensitivities we face in our current world. And once again, we also discover how a deceitful honesty can affect the lives of people, even destroying them. There is a very strong relationship with deception. That is, to engage in falsehood, which is only geared to deceive others by presenting something as true when it is not. That also means the erosion of trust. In fact, when falsehoods are discovered, they can severely damage a person's reputation and the trust others place in them. Consider now the relationship between honesty and falsehood. Now we are observing the opposite concepts. Honesty and falsehood are indeed the direct opposites, and obviously one cannot be honest and engage in falsehood, and the consequences of falsehood. Engaging in falsehood can lead to negative consequences, such as increased stress, a damaged sense of self-worth, and a general breakdown of trust in society. What about its impact on relationships? Strong relationships are built on a foundation of honesty and mutual trust. Falsehoods undermine this foundation and making it very difficult to maintain meaningful connections. As we read in the Journal of Moral Education, Volume 53 of 2024, wherein honesty is described as respect for the right not to be deceived. No doubt that honesty is an important word describing a virtue. However, there has been insufficient philosophical study on what constitutes the nature and value of honesty as a distinctive virtue. There are also many important philosophical challenges to be addressed. For instance, what is the scope of honesty? That's a good question. What is the relationship between honesty and lying? Is there any advice on access for honesty? Among the philosophical issues related to honesty, and as found, one issue particularly is interesting and very important. What is the characteristic reason that motivates a virtuous, honest person to perform honest actions? Wilson and Miller have recently pointed out that by developing a coherent account of the virtues, virtually honest person's motivational reason becomes critical for realizing the virtue of understanding and honesty. But only a very few, if any, philosophical studies have been conducted on this topic. A recent and new paper explored what a virtuously honest person's characteristics could be the reason to perform honest actions. After justifying the need for a new account of the characteristics motivating the reason for honesty, when debating the respect to what we call the right not to be deceived is really the moral ground which provides the characteristic reason that motivates virtually the honest person's rightful action. Next, it is literally defined as the right not to be deceived, and examining its sources. How is it distinguished from other rights such as the right to know and the right to autonomy? After addressing the possible objections, we arrive at a conclusion which is done by discussing its educational implications on cultivating the virtue of honesty. People say honesty is the best policy. Agreed. Indeed, in real life situations, there can be many reasons to perform the ethical and morally sound behaviors. It either makes you, or another person, or at least makes one appear more trustworthy, as well as strengthening one's relationships and providing consistency to the concerned person's life. Honest actions can also manifest in different sorts of virtuous traits. For example, it manifests in benevolence when you tell the truth to protect someone's well-being. It manifests in fair-mindedness when you avoid deception because you think it would be unfair. However, if honesty is a virtue that is most certainly distinguished from other virtues such as benevolence and fair-mindedness alone, what would be the characteristic moral ground that serves them to motivate a person who possesses this virtue to perform honest actions? Just ponder about. To pursue self-interests, to promote others' well-being, even simply to be or to become an honest person. Good question. To understand honesty as a virtue which is meaningfully distinct from other virtues, it would be important to examine the reason for what characteristically motivates the honest person to perform honest actions. Despite its importance, there have been only a few attempts to explore this topic. Okay. An adequate account of honest person's characteristic motivational reason should be possible to explain, firstly, why an honest person's honest actions merit moral praise. As Robert C. Robert and Ryan West point out, motivation is crucial to the virtue of honesty, and that not just any motivation to tell the truth will do. If an account of honesty sets no limits on the kind of reasons that motivate an honest person, then it would be hard for such an account to explain the moral praise as of acting from honesty, since one may perform seemingly honest actions based on an egotistic desire, other than praiseworthy motives. For example, a merchant may refrain from deceiving her or his customers just because she or he believes that being honest is the best way to maximize her or his profits. A boy may keep telling the truth because of a mere obsession with not lying, which has been fostered through his mother's strict education. And this indicates honest actions motivated by such considerations as self-interest or obsession, it may therefore be hard to find them morally praiseworthy. Confused? No. Thus, without specifying the moral ground that is supposed to motivate to act from the virtue of honesty, it would be hard to tell when and why it is morally praiseworthy to perform such actions. Wenner's pluralistic account addresses the problem of being too egoistic or self-regarding by arguing that an honest person's motivating reasons must include beautiful and not egoistic behaviors. The virtue of honesty is the virtue of being disposed, centrally and reliably, to not intentionally distort the facts as the agencies express them, and primarily for good, virtuous, motivating reasons, or one or more kinds of authors call K1 through to K2 of sufficient motivation, strength, and scope to encompass all human beings, along with the absence of significant non-virtuous motivation to distort the facts as the agent sees them. Miller's pluralistic account allows for different kinds of motivation. For instance, a caring attitude for a sense of fairness to provide the impetus for being honest, thereby showing why someone who performs honest actions from such motives is virtuous and morally praiseworthy. Consider the following replies to the question, why did you tell the truth about your past business failures, when it would have been so much easier to tell lies? Answers. He deserved to hear the truth. I don't lie to my friends. It is important for us to be able to trust each other. A good person would not do that. It would not have been honest. According to the pluralistic account, each of these virtuous considerations may qualify as an honest person's motivating reasons. However, Miller's characteristic approach cannot adequately explain what marks honesty off from other virtues. That is the pluralistic approach, which fails to specify the ultimate moral ground of honesty as a virtue that establishes honesty status as a distinctive virtue. If various virtuous movements, along with motivating reasons, do the work of making honest actions morally praiseworthy each time, then it may undermine the status of honesty as a distinctive virtue that deserves a separate name, or perhaps even identification, since performing honest actions may be understood merely as one specific way in which other virtues, for instance, benevolence or fair-mindedness, are manifested. Okay. Thus, an adequate account of honesty needs to specify the model ground that provides the characteristic reason that motivates an honest person to perform honest actions. Right. Wilson suggests that this characteristic motivating reason of honesty is to avoid deception. However, as he acknowledges, this is not a sufficiently deep account of the motivation of honesty as a virtue, since one may still be disposed to avoid deception motivated by praiseworthy reasons such as egotistical desires or fear of a bad reputation. Just think about it. It still does not offer a convincing account of what makes honesty as a characteristic motivating reason which is morally praiseworthy. Nor does being honest for honesty's sake adequately explain the honest person's characteristic motivating reason, for it presupposes the value or goal of honesty, which needs to be explained first. An answer like, "I did it because it was the honest thing to do," would not explain, let alone justify, much about why she performs or he performs the honest action where she or he could easily tell a lie. This is also true if such an answer can be a consideration that motivates people to perform honest actions. Still, there should be some deeper motivating reason that characterizes honesty as a distinctive virtue. Of course, to the question, why are you doing it? Because it is the virtuous, benevolent, fair, honest, courageous thing to do, can normally serve as a reasonable answer in our everyday life. But this type of answer is still not adequate because it does not shed sufficient light on why it is important to do what is demanded by the particular virtue in question, unless the questioner already understands and accepts the importance of what that virtue is. While referring to honesty as the reason for not deceiving is commonly found in our ordinary conversations, being honest itself cannot be part of what explains honesty, characteristic of motivating reason. For being honest cannot be part of its own honesty-making feature. It may be suggested that an honest person performs honesty for truth's sake. For example, David says that the target of honesty could seem to be the truth, and takes the disposition to seek to honor that truth as the soul of honesty, and as a moral virtue. Admittedly, such a disposition may constitute honesty as an epistemic virtue, which one thinks is better called intellectual honesty, since it helps the agent herself or himself to get closer to the truth. It is true that both intellectual honesty and moral honesty share the concern for the truth in some sense. Even honesty as a moral virtue is at least or indirectly related to the truth, in the sense that not deceiving, that is, preventing someone from acquiring the truth in question, who is in its importance to the value of truth. If it were not important to acquire truth and avoid falsehoods, deception would not have been an ethical issue from the beginning. However, one does not think seeking and honoring truth is the characteristically motivating reason of honesty as a moral virtue, on which one intends to focus here. Honesty as a moral virtue should involve some virtuous way of treating certain morally significant aspects of the person to whom we are trying to be honest, rather than truth per se. Here is a little footnote for you. Jehovah's Witnesses always consider what they speak of or preach about as being the only truth. It is not. It is only made to be believed in and to make people accept them and their lies as the truth. It is unfortunate that when they are at your doorstep, you may not be able to see their real motives, as they classify what they have been taught by the Watchtower organization to be the only truth, and their Bible, which is the Watchtower interpretation and translation, and consider it to be the truth of Jehovah. That alone is dishonest and certainly morally significant aspect of their lives. They care for being an honest person, would also not to be in the motivational profile of a fully honest person, while the motivation to be honest is neither vicious nor egoistic. It is too self-regarding to be the characteristic and motivating reason for an honest person to perform honesty. The honest person's focus would not be seen as his or her own character, but on what the virtue of honesty demands. A person who is not yet but wanting to be virtuous may perform virtued actions to become or to be a virtuous person, but a fully virtuous person would be motivated by what the given virtue tells to care about, at least not primarily by such a self-regarding consideration. For example, a fully benevolent person would help another person in need, motivated by a concern for that person's well-being rather than by the desire to be or to become a benevolent person. One of the reasons why deceiving is a bad word, possibly letting it render the deceiver as a dishonest person, but to preserve or promote one's complete honesty seems to be too self-regarding to be an honest person's characteristically motivating reason. Just think about it. Respect for the right not to be deceived. Consider. Respect for the right not to be deceived as honesty's characteristic motivating reason. Honesty is a matter of respecting something valuable in a person in question. Any context of communication. In this field of communication, the concern should be focused on the person with whom one tries to communicate. Respect for the right not to be deceived is the moral ground that provides the characteristic motivating reason for an honest person to perform honest actions. You have the right not to be deceived, and this grounds the characteristic motivating reason of an honest person. An honest person would be consciously motivated by the reason of respecting whenever she or he performs her or his actions. Respect should at least be honest person's underlying reason to perform the given honest action, even if it does not serve as a salient, motivating reason on the surface of her or his consciousness. Whether the respect for serving as a reason gets clearer in a situation where an honest action serves no ulterior purpose, where it seems to even conflict with other considerations, such as those of prudence and benevolence. Consider the context where it is said. Suppose that telling the truth would neither promote her or his well-being, nor even serve any other purpose. So, she could easily have chosen to deceive the other about whatever the subject matter is. But given that she or he is an honest person, of course, she or he chooses to avoid deceiving the other. The question here is, what would it take to be the reason not to deceive him or her in such a situation? The reason would not be the desire to show off her knowledgeability or his knowledgeability, since such a self-centered consideration does not seem to be an honest person's reason to perform the action. The action performed can still qualify as an honest action, but that would be different from an action motivated by a virtuous reason. It would not be a concern for her well-being, since it is assumed in this case that knowing whatever it is to be known would not promote their well-being in any sense. One cannot therefore deny that some honest action can be performed motivated by other virtuous considerations, such as the concern for the given person's well-being. Such an action would not only be honest, but also virtually motivated. However, this is an action performed from honesty in a strict sense. Therefore, it is impossible to explain away any unexpected motivation that is not in respect for R and D as belonging to a different virtue. A virtue has a behavioral and motivational aspect, regardless of the motivation. One who performs honest actions more stably would be more honest, at least in the behavioral aspect, than the one who does so less stable. Actual human psychology is very complicated. Other virtues, characteristic motivating reasons may affect, directly or indirectly, that of honesty. Someone who tends to be motivated by the consideration of giving others a fair share may also be more likely to be motivated by respect for their R and D. We discover that there can be three possible motivating reasons to perform an honest action. 1. For a non-virtuous reason, for example, an egotistic reason. 2. Virtuous but not honest reason, for instance, the reasons of benevolence, such as to promote or protect the given person's well-being. 3. The reason of honesty. 4. To respect R&D. The case number 1, the action is an honest one, but is not virtuous because it is motivating reason is not virtuous. Unlike number 1 and 2 is a case of an honest action motivated by virtuous reason. The virtuous reason in question is a reason of benevolence, for instance, to promote and to protect the given person's well-being rather than that of honesty. Although an honest action can be motivated by both a reasonable benevolence and a reasonable honesty, they can also diverge from each other. A fully virtuous person would consider various reasons of different virtues that are relevant to the situation and hit the right balance among them and deciding what to do. It would be important to distinguish the reason of honesty from the reason of benevolence in order to know what should be considered that should compete with each other in the given situation. What benevolence demands is to promote what is given, person's well-being, which of course is what honesty demands. It really is to respect his friend's R&D. R&D stands for right not to be deceived. What is the right not to be deceived? Once again, generally speaking, R&D is grounded in the idea that each person has a claim that no one intrudes into their epistemic life. We all have the basic desire to be in touch with reality, sometimes because that is the precondition for living an autonomous life, and sometimes simply because of curiosity. Although we may not have the right to be told or be informed about whatever we want to know, it should be reasonable to say that we have at least a minimal claim that no one positively intrudes into our pursuit of truth by deceiving us, at least if there is no good reason to do so. Hopefully, the witnesses are listening. In this sense, the general R&D is grounded in our basic claim that no one can inappropriately interrupt our pursuit of epistemic life. Everyone living on planet Earth, under normal conditions, have the general R&D by default, so to speak. It indeed is everyone's birthright. The idea behind this discussion is to inform and inspire philosophical and empirical works in social sciences, which include moral psychology and education. It may also have the potential to have some practical impact on fields such as character education, child rearing, and medical research and practice. Once again, a virtuous person acts virtuously, motivated by a virtuous reason. If honesty is a virtue, especially as it is widely endorsed, the characteristic reason that motivates the honest person as it should be explicated. One hopes this can serve as a step towards filling the gap in the literature and the science on the virtue of honesty, as the author indicates. We will meet you here again by the next episode. Keep smiling and be happy. And again, thank you.